One thing you can't do in Canada is promote racism. And there's a law called the BC Human Rights Code, which makes it illegal to promote hatred against an identifiable group. Well, what happened this week was the Nanaimo Daily News, which is a newspaper, published a letter that basically was promoting hatred against Aboriginal people, the First Nations people. Well, what happened was the First Nations people had a big demonstration, and they went to the newsroom, and the publisher, Hugh Nicholson, had to apologize, and he apologized saying that they shouldn't have published this letter. And so that this is something that is part of our Canadian culture. Is we're very opposed to racism, and so there are laws on the books. There's a Canadian Human Rights Code. There's a BC Human Rights Code. So the publisher admitted that he made a mistake and that he would try not to do anything like that ever again. But it shows the power that people can have when they feel that they're experiencing racism, that they actually show up and hold a protest. We've seen this in the Chinese community in the past, where they've sometimes protested against coverage in various newspapers, especially several years ago when there were people would be buying real estate and they'd make the connection that kind of confuse investment and immigration. When somebody immigrates to Canada, you know, they're taking a big step, sometimes a lot of risk, moving to an unknown country to create a better life for their family, and that should be welcomed. Well, sometimes it wasn't welcomed in the past, and that led to protests against the media. And we've seen people of South Asian descent hold protests outside the Vancouver Sun. So what we saw this week with the Nanaimo Daily News and Aboriginal people is not unusual. It doesn't happen very often, but it's also a reminder of, that we live in a country where we try to oppose racism. Another story that was in the news was in Ottawa, involving a member of Parliament from Langley named Mark Warawa. And what he was doing was he wants to talk about abortion in Parliament. And he's an opponent of abortion. But the Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, is in the same party as Mark Warawa, and he didn't want his member of Parliament in his party talking about abortion. So the MP did this anyway, and this caused a big kerfuffle and controversy in Ottawa, and it's a sign that some of the members of Parliament are getting frustrated about the level of control by the Prime Minister in particular, but also the Conservative cabinet. And there's going to be an election in 2015 in federal government, and we can see these signs that some of the members of Parliament have been there for quite a few years, and they don't want to just go to Ottawa and just echo what their bosses are saying, and some of them have real concerns. So this has triggered some discussion in Canada about the level of democracy for the politicians. That there was a famous statement by Pierre Trudeau when he was Prime Minister, and he said 50 meters or 50 feet from Parliament Hill, MPs are nobodies. And of course the MPs didn't like hearing that, and I don't think it's fair to say that members of Parliament are nobodies, but they actually don't have as much power as people might think. Most of the power is in the office of the Prime Minister and in the cabinet. And it's hard for the members of Parliament even to get rid of their leader, because the leader is elected by the members of the party, not by the members of Parliament. So that's a different situation than in England. In England, in the British Parliament, what happens is the leader is elected by the members of Parliament, so the leader has to be respectful of the members to a greater degree than in Canada, where the leader is elected by the members of the party. So we're seeing this in the Liberal Party. In April, they're going to elect a new leader. It's looking like Justin Trudeau, who's the son of the former Prime Minister who thought MPs were nobodies, is going to become the next leader of the Liberal Party, although there's a slim chance that Joyce Murray, who represents Vancouver Quadra, could pull off a surprising victory. Joyce Murray is supported by a lot of environmentalists, and she opposes the Enbridge pipeline going to the West Coast. Justin Trudeau says he opposes this pipeline. Justin Trudeau, though, was in favor of the takeover of Nexen by the Chinese government state-owned oil company, and that surprised some people because some thought that he might oppose that so they could keep a greater portion of the oil industry in Canadian hands. And now, for my final comment, it involves the Vancouver Canucks. And that's the hockey team in Vancouver, and it's won 6 games in a row. The goalie, Corey Schneider, is playing spectacularly. You see a lot more smiles on the faces of people walking around Vancouver because the hockey team is doing well. And once they start losing, that's when trouble starts, and people get a little more grumpy at work. But for now, things are going well. And for WOW TV, I'm Charlie Smith, editor of the Georgia Straight. Ngoy.
感谢收看今天的大温故事，我们下期再见。